So a few months ago, I bought a half a cow, right? So a realtor that I work with, her husband is like a legitimate cowboy. Like he's the guy who goes and fixes the barbed wire fences and rides the, I mean, like raises the cows and all that. So they sell these, they sell cows, right? They basically take them to market, but you can go in there and you can basically buy one or buy half one and you pick it and they slaughter it. You know, it's all good stuff.
Yeah.
So I got it with Frank and Kian, and there's a lot of meat on a half a cow. I mean, a lot. I had to go buy a separate freezer for all the meats that I have. And this was quite a while ago. So I have a third of a half of a cow. So yesterday, me and my wife were doing the Super Bowl, like super mellow. So I pull out some ribs. I go, hey, I got some ribs here from my cow that I haven't used. So I pulled them out the night before the Super Bowl. And then I went and checked them out yesterday. My ribs, each rib is that thick. So imagine the rib goes here and then the rib meat steak, each one is that big.
Wow.
Never seen anything like it.
Wow. Well, and with that, that's how we're greeting the Facebook world and LabCoatAgents. Welcome back. We took a week off, which means a month off, essentially, from a week in the month, I think is what we call this, with the National Real Estate Post, and we're back with Brian Stevens. So thank you to those of you on the Zoom side. If you have any questions as we talk today, throw them in the chat. And if you're on the Facebook side, throw them in the comments and we will respond later. Brian, it's good to see you. There's a lot to talk about. I wanted to summarize a couple of things and I'll let you run with it and then we'll just wrap. I wanted to talk about, obviously, the new president has taken office. So what does this mean for the CFPB, right? What can we anticipate, how will that affect the mortgage world, which will absolutely affect the real estate world? And then there was another headline with you guys talked to Barry Habib the other day about this stimulus that might be coming and what kind of a effect that's going to have. So let's start with those two topics and let's see where it takes us.
Okay. Well, there twofold with the CFPB. It's going to be it's the tale of two cities, right? That's what we're going to see when it comes to enforcement, oversight, and underwriting guidelines. So for your standard meat and potatoes fare, your Fannie Freddie Jenny stuff, we're going to see more enforcement actions coming from the CFPB. In fact, we're going to see more enforcements coming across the board in all facets of our life when it comes to tightening the ship for Middle America, and that is going to be the case. We talked about this before. I thought we spoke about it here before, but one of the big things that we're seeing right now, and we're hearing from DeMarco from the FHFA, which is going to be in part enforced by the CFPB, is equal opportunity enforcement actions. So there's going to be a massive surge within the mortgage market to elevate underserved communities and minority classes. So we're going to be looking at what's called HMDA data a lot more closely. So in other words, let me just paint this picture here real quickly. If a lender is working in two markets, and over here you have your typical white suburban community, and over here you have a underserved community of color. So what happens is let's assume each community is of equal size. So what that lender has to do, if they're right there in the middle, their numbers need to reflect 50% of serving this market and 50% serving this market. Here's what makes it complicated is not only do we have to have a lender serving 50% this market and 50% this market, the underserved market, but the interest rates on those loans and the products have to be equal, okay? So that's what our HMDA data is going to reflect. So if I have 100 people over here who are, and listen, I'm not being insensitive, I just want to explain how this is gonna work. But let's say I have 100 people over here who are by and large white and middle class. We know statistically, not by my numbers, but by FICO, Equifax, and the United States Census Bureau, that they're going to earn more money and they're going to have higher credit scores. We know this to be factually accurate. This is not me talking. This is the United States federal government through the Census Bureau. On this side, with underserved communities and oftentimes community of colors, we know that they're across the board going to earn less money and their credit scores are statistically going to be lower. Again, this is also by the United States Census Bureau and by Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. We know this to be factually accurate. Why is this important? Because if I'm the lender sitting on the fence here, I have what's called a loan level price adjustment. That means if I have somebody with a lower credit score, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, the government enterprises, are going to charge me more money to charge them more money because that loan is deemed to be a higher risk. So it is the federal agency that is mandating that I charge a minority community a higher interest rate if they have lower credit scores and earn less money. It's going to affect their debt to income ratios. So we have institutionalized a problem here, haven't we? Because on one hand, the government is telling us we have to represent both communities equally and we have to give them both equal interest rates, which we all think is great, which is what we want to do. But at the same time, they have institutionalized me giving minority and underserved communities higher interest rates and fewer loan products. So it's kind of, we're damned if we do, damned if we don't. How does a lender combat this? Well, here's what we do. Is a lender then is going to charge this community a higher interest rate, get more rebate, make more money on those loans, and then apply them to this community. So we have to create kind of a duct system between the two communities in order to get our home to data to work. And to say that this is less than perfect would be the biggest underestimation or the biggest problem I think you could possibly assume. Now, the other part with the new administration, so it's going to be much more difficult if you're dealing with your Fannie, Freddie, Ginnie loans. Now, when you're looking at your down payment assistance or your bond programs or your community reinvestment money that's going to be on a state by state basis, and that money is generally earmarked for people who make 80% or less than 80% of the median income for the community based on their family size. Those type of bond programs and community reinvestment programs and programs that are put together by Fannie, Freddie, and Ginnie, they're going to have looser underwriting guidelines, meaning we're going to see more opportunity with those type of loans. Now, I don't want to get in the weeds on this, but I'm going to for a second here. So let's say I have a 50% back-end ratio. Now, or 50% front-end ratio, meaning 50% of my income is going to go to my principal, interest, tax, and insurance. And let's say I make $50,000 a month, okay? Well, that means I still have $25,000 left over, right? Now, $25,000 left over, if I make $50,000 a month and my payment is $25,000 a month, that means I still have $25,000 to go ahead and make car payments and fix my roof and buy my, get tires for my car when I need it and, stuff like that. Now, let's say that I have a debt to income ratio that's 50, but now I make $2,000 a month. Well, that means I have $1,000 going to my house payment, and now I only have $1,000 left over to pay my utilities, to pay my deferred maintenance, to pay for my car payment, to pay for all the other things. How far is that $1,000 going to go? It's not going to go very far, is it, when you consider that you have all of your other liabilities and your bills going in there? So we call this a residual income. So it makes more sense for people who make a lot of money to have that higher debt to income ratio because they have a lot more money left over. Yet, oddly enough, we're keeping those debt to income ratios down. But with the community reinvestment money and like a lot of the bond issues and stuff that we're going to see with Fannie, Freddie, and Ginnie to serve the underserved communities, what they're doing is they're saying, we want to put more people in homes, so we're going to let people who don't make money have higher debt to income ratios than people who make a lot of money. They've literally inverted how this whole thing should look. So now if I have somebody who makes $2,500 a month and they have a 50% debt to income ratio, here's the question. How long is it going to take for that person to find themselves in financial dire straits? And the answer is not very long, because when the roof needs to get fixed on the house that they just purchased, are they going to have the money set aside for that? So we're going to make things easier, but frankly, I think it's going to complicate things. And we have a long, rich history of the road to hell being paved with good intentions, with underserved communities and people who are on the lower socioeconomic rungs of the ladder. So these are the two things that I think we're going to see in 2021. If I was a lender on this call right now, or even a real estate agent, and you're going to be looking at some bond issues, or some bond money, I would be very cautious about the ability to repay on those deals. I would be very cautious on somebody who's making $3,000 or $4,000 a month and allowing that person to go to 50% debt to income ratios, even if the guidelines allow you to do it.
So is this potentially leading us down the path of another bubble? I mean, you mentioned this, so they're going to loosen guidelines, which is potentially going to put those potential borrowers, and they are higher risk. So what's going to end up happening, like you said, when repairs need to be made, et cetera, life happens. That coupled with the overpaying, the overappraising of houses going on right now, which just reminds me of the mid 2000s big time, maybe even worse.
Yeah.
I think it's important for us in the industry to understand the impact, because I think most lenders and realtors just tend to ignore it and say, I'm just going to ride the wave and make as much money as I can and not even worry about what a bubble bursting or a crash means to my business, when I think they should be paying very close attention to it. You should be riding the wave, but riding the wave with wide open eyes and a plan for 1 year, 2 year, 3 years from now, because, we went through this once, and those who haven't gone through it can do your homework and figure out what happened. And it was nasty.
Yeah, I think I told you this before, but this old salty dog I used to work with, he said, "You know what the lender's prayer is, don't you, Brian?" I go, "No, what's the lender's prayer?" He said, "Dear Lord, please give me one more good market, and I promise I'll save some money next time."
Right.
And that really kind of is the operative thing here, is save money. But when we look at the market that we're in right now, we do have a better book of business that we wrote. Everyone knows that. We're not built on the back of 228s and 327s. We're built on the back of, I think your average credit score over the past 10 years with your Fannie and Freddie loans is somewhere to the tune of 740. I mean, it's insanely high. The amount of equity that we have right now is good. So the book of business, I think, is stronger than it was before the bubble of 2008. But there are there are variables out there that we didn't have before. And when everybody's looking at the economy right now, and everyone's looking at the housing market, and looking at how strong the economy is, well, yeah, we just had a $3 trillion bailout. Well, that's going to mask a lot of problems. We're about to get another $1.9 trillion bailout. And oh, by the way, every single housing group says the $1.9 trillion bailout is going to make affordability in housing even further away for most people. It's not a good thing. The $1.9 trillion bailout is not going to help, but it's going to hurt housing by making it less affordable. But that's also going to be a mask. And here's the variable that we don't know. Like, nobody knows what's going on with this whole COVID thing. Nobody knows what's going on with COVID. Here's what I can tell you, that right now we have 12% of the population in the United States has been vaccinated. That's 41 million people. We're vaccinating 1.46 million people per day. And at this rate, 75% of the United States population should be vaccinated, assuming 75% of the people are going to get the vaccination in the next 10 months. But then you're hearing about all these different strains that are coming out. And who knows? I hear a lot of people saying we're going to be living with COVID forever. So we truly don't know what the future holds. So could there be adverse effects on our economy that could hurt housing and we could see another bubble? You bet your butt. You bet your butt there can be. Because we simply don't know. I don't know. You don't know. Economists don't know. We're not doctors. Doctors don't know economy. So there's variables at play. The only thing a lender and a realtor can do right now is write it out, be responsible, as for a lender, write clean loans, bust your butt, take advantage of the opportunities while we have them in front of us. And like I said, with the lender's prayer, sock some money away right now, because here's one thing we know about the hottest market in the world. I don't care what market it is. It doesn't need to be housing. Every hottest market in any industry, anywhere in the history of the world, there's only one way to go from the hottest market. There's only one way to go in the hottest market for anything. And that's going to be a correction. And how big that correction is going to be, is it going to be a bunny slope, or are we going to go down a double diamond? We just don't know at this point.
Right. Well, it's a combination of things too, though. So let's talk about that for a second, because you're going to be putting a bunch of potentially questionable buyers into homes, buyers that are teetering on the line of qualifying. They're going to be overpaying for a house. And then 2 or 3 years from now, the market's going to correct, and the house that they paid $200,000 for is actually only worth 150. Now they are in a financial strain at that time, and they're thinking to themselves, I'm 50 grand upside down on my mortgage. I haven't paid a dime to principal because that's just the way a 30-year works. And I can barely pay my mortgage. So what am I going to do? I'm just going to let it go and go become a renter because I just can't, I don't have any other options. And then all of a sudden, here comes this rash of foreclosures. And so that will potentially have an effect, but it's also potential opportunity. I mean, I was just talking to a realtor today who had an open house over the weekend, had over 100 people through, and he was texting me all this, like, this is crazy, blah, blah, blah. We're going to get an offer 50 grand over list. And I'm just like, God.
But you actually, just real quickly, you had an open house where the house was actually open and people were walking in it?
Yeah, well, we're in Missouri.
Okay,
Yeah.
no, I was just having this conversation with Frank, and he says, yeah, there's places where they're actually having open houses that are actually open.
Yeah.
That was, by the way, that's my point. So when looking at the COVID numbers here, if we have 75% of the population, which is going to be vaccinated in the next 10 months, that means we're going to see more markets that are going to open up, like in Missouri. And the opportunity for, personal interaction with folks and doing these open houses, I think is a great opportunity for real estate agents. I think, listen, I'm telling you right now, people are pent up, especially in states like California. The chance to get out and talk with people is going to be huge when that wave eventually does hit. We're sitting at almost 12% vaccinated in California. Who knows how many people have it? Who knows how many people don't care? But probably somewhere in the next 3 or 4 months, we're going to start to see one of the tightest markets in the country open up. And I would be the first to market with an open house if I was a real estate agent. I absolutely would.
Just for the sake of putting people together again. And that there will be some excitement there.
Did you see all that fantastic social distancing at the Super Bowl?
Oh, right. Well, you know what? Actually, when I was watching that, I was like, holy crap, there's a lot of people in the stands. And then I realized it really was just a bunch of, they did a good job of making cardboard cutouts look like people.
They did. It
was interesting. So, but let's look into the future a little bit. And, you and I have both gone through this. I'm sure some of the people watching this have gone through this. What can we do differently this time? What can we do differently to prepare properly for the downturn, for when this does happen? Because it's going to happen. There's going to end up becoming a whole new rash of foreclosures as a result of a escalated priced market where people just put themselves in. They're in an issue. They put themselves in a bind, and now they're sitting on negative equity. And they're like, screw it, just let the house go. Yeah. The impact to the real estate world is what?
Well, if we do start to see, chinks in the armor, and we do start to see, if we have a market that's going to turn, we will know 6 months beforehand. It's not just going to turn like that. There will be enough indicators, if you're looking at it astutely enough, to see the direction the market is going to go. From a real estate agent standpoint, I was doing speaking gigs like in 2008, 9, and 10, when they had all these asset managers and they would have these huge conventions and these, you'd have like 100 real estate agents who had no listings and then one real estate agent who had like 500 listings. As a real estate agent right now, what I would do, well, it's always best practices, but if we start to see the market change, then our messaging to our sphere of influence, our ecosystem, our past client database, our family, our friends, and even our future and existing client database, the messaging that we have to deliver to them on a regular basis is going to have to start to change. So we're seeing, as we talked about the last time a couple of weeks ago, we're seeing at 90 to 120 days late on mortgages spiking. Those are all pre-foreclosures. If they're going to get foreclosed on or turn into forbearances, we don't know. But that is a bad indicator that those numbers are going up. People who have not made their house payment for at least a quarter of a year, that's not healthy. So if we see these numbers continue to increase, what we have to do is we have to be first to market and speaking with those folks and letting them know that a short sale is a better alternative than a foreclosure. Mm-hmm. So 1 is communication and 2 is going to be messaging. Right now, it's perfectly acceptable to stay in front of your clients and say, it's a great time to buy because in fact it is. And with the new stimulus coming out, and what we haven't spoke about yet is the tax credit, which is probably coming around, the $15,000 Joe Biden tax credit. And then the down payment assistance programs that's going to be widely adopted by mortgage lenders is also going to create much more demand for housing that we currently have. Are we overheating the engine? Jeff, are we overheating the engine? I don't know. We certainly could be. There's a lot of people who said we don't need a tax credit right now, and we don't need widely adopted down payment assistance because we already have too much demand for limited inventory. However, with the tax credit and the down payment assistance, along with the existing hot market, messaging with your client, your sphere of influence, your ecosystem, saying it's a great time to buy. It's also a great time to sell and move up. That's great messaging. Messaging is the most important. However, if we do start to see trends where those 90 and 120-day lates start to double and triple off what their current numbers are, then maybe we need to start changing what our message is and going out to folks who are late and saying, hey, you need to short sell this house before it turns into a foreclosure, because the long-term ramifications of a foreclosure are going to be infinitely worse than that of a short sale.
Yeah. And you and I have talked about this in ad nauseum, to be honest, about this opportunity for realtors to be communicating with your past customers that is going to create you opportunity. But let's move forward. I don't want to beat that horse, because you know what? You can go back and watch previous episodes if you'd like.
Sure.
But I think you gave them enough to know what they should be doing. And if nothing else, just be creating marketing on your social media, through your email blasts that talk about these topics. This is very important. But let's talk about the 1.9 trillion. Let's talk about the potential, the 15,000 stimulus. What's coming? What does that look like? Do we have any more information from the last time we talked?
Well, I think the most interesting of these that is we're going to start to see more of, and there's already lenders out there who are starting to adopt the down payment assistance and what that's going to look like. And have we spoke about this before?
I think we did a month ago, but let's get some updates on it.
Okay, reboot it. So let's assume that you're selling an interest rate of 3% right now, your lender is, okay? So now that lender can sell an interest rate of 4% to your client instead of a rate of 3%. Well, why would a lender sell a rate of 4% instead of a rate of 3%? Well, because when the lender sells a rate of 4%, whoever they're selling that loan to is going to give them, say, 2.5% of the loan amount. So if you have a $200,000 loan amount, that lender's going to get $5,000 back by selling a rate that's a point higher. Again, these are generalities. So selling a rate that's higher is going to give that lender more money. And then that lender can use that money and turn around and give it to your client for the down payment on their house. So let's, as a real estate agent, let's assume you're doing an FHA deal here. All right. So you're going to have a $200,000 loan amount. So you're going to buy a house for $218,000, whatever. Okay. So you go into contract there, and then as a real estate agent, you negotiate all your recurring and non-recurring closing costs, as FHA will allow you to do. But as we know, the down payment has to come from the borrower in some way, shape, or form. But you've negotiated all the closing costs short of the down payment. So now your borrower doesn't have that down payment. So what do we do? Well, that's great. So what Jeff can do now is to say, well, instead of selling you a rate of 3%, I can sell you a rate of 4%, which you still qualify for. Your payment's only this much higher. It's not going to be that much higher. But what I can do is I can give you 80% of your down payment, something that FHA has never, ever, ever, ever allowed to have happen in the past. But now they're saying you can go ahead and do this. So now your borrower, instead of needing to come up with, say, $10,000, only needs to come up with $2,000. And in fact, Jeff can get enough rebate to cover that entire down payment, which would turn your FHA deal effectively into 100% financing. This is something that HUD and the FHA have fought vigorously against since at least the past 25 years since I've been in the business. There's been multiple forms of down payment assistance that you can put alongside your FHA deals, and HUD has taken every one of them to court. In fact, this version of down payment assistance, HUD actually took to court a year and a half ago. The down payment assistance that started on a Native American reservation fought back. When the Trump administration came in, they said, do whatever the hell you want to do. We don't care anymore. But lenders still didn't do it. But now the FHA and HUD are coming out and actually endorsing these forms of down payment assistance, which means lenders are going to start to allow these modifications onto their FHA deals.
You're talking about like Chenoa.
It is, but the Chenoa, the Chinoa process is going to be, it's already being adopted. I know a handful of banks that are already doing it, and I know that HUD and FHA are allowing it. As a real estate agent, don't expect this like tomorrow. This is going to be a slow roll process. Like, don't run to your lender and say, Brian said you guys can do this right now. And they're going to say, Brian doesn't know what he's talking about. But this is definitely starting to heat up, and lenders are starting to warm to the idea. So I suspect somewhere in the next 3 to 6 months, you're going to see this form of down payment. The reason why lenders like this one is there's really no additional paperwork involved. Like when we're looking at tax credit and we're looking at bond money, there's a separate set of application forms that the lender needs to fill out. And then that generally needs to get processed and underwritten by somebody other than their underwriter. So you might be able to be 72 hours with the underwriter with your lender, then you could be 72 weeks with your bond underwriter. So those are going to be interesting. Now, with the $1.9 trillion bailout that's coming, the big concern here is it's just going to put more people into the pool of potential buyers. And we've already got overheated demand for properties. The biggest issue that we've had is that we've talked about ad nauseum as well, is that we simply don't have the inventory for the demand. This is just going to simply create more demand. Think about this. A tax credit is going to create more demand. Down payment assistance is going to create more demand. A $1.9 trillion handout is going to create more demand.
Which is going to drive up prices of the already existing lack of inventory.
Exactly. And when you overheat a car, what does it do? It locks up and breaks down. And that's a concern here is, we're trying to put out a house fire with a hose full of gasoline. I mean, do we really need these type of actions right now? And I would argue we don't. And if you look at the tax credit and the stimulus right now, in every housing advocacy group and every agency and every association that represents any facet of housing, be it lending, be it credit unions, be it banking, be it real estate agents, be it title and escrow, they're all saying this is going to hurt housing. And when everybody unilaterally across the board, except for the federal government, everybody who actually has their boots, in the housing market say this is a bad idea, there's a good chance the concern that Jeff was raising just a few moments ago, it's not henny penny, the sky is falling. This is what we call in the housing market unintended consequences, of what our actions and activities are. We don't need to create more demand. We need to create more houses and more inventory.
It's a bunch of politicians sitting around a boardroom saying, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. And then just moving on without actually thinking about what the consequences are.
What's really interesting is, the ones who are trying to create more inventory right now, you've seen all the actions with, with Microsoft and, with Facebook and with Google.
Yeah.
I mean, these companies, these huge tech companies, they're throwing billions and billions of dollars at affordable housing right now. They're doing more for affordable housing, these tech companies are, than the federal government is. So when I hear, HUD and Fannie and Freddie and the FHFA, coming in and talking about, helping underserved communities, with allowing them to have higher debt to income ratios, on loans and creating all these tax credits and doing nothing about the inventory problem, it really is lip service to me. If we want to deal with the homelessness issue, we have to deal with the affordability issue. And to deal with the affordability issue, we need more homes to be built. I mean, we need eminent domain. We need, a clear and easy zoning records and small affordable houses.
I agree. I mean, they need to be dumping money into to stimulate builders to build more homes, right?
Sure.
It's as simple as that.
Let's get rid of some of the permits.
Yeah, well, especially in your state.
Oh, goodness.
Well, awesome, man. Well, I think this has been a good rehash. Is there anything else that you want to cover today before we wrap up?
No, honestly, right now, I think it's just time to, we're well into the new year. It always happens right about now. We're well into the new year. It's time to roll our sleeves up and make sure that we're going to have a great year. This is the time when everybody in their New Year's resolutions, we start to trip and have hiccups. This is the time to really kind of dig deep, roll your sleeves up, all the metaphors you want, pin your ears back, sharpen your teeth, all the things that we need to do. This is a time to double down on our efforts to make sure that we're going to have a great year. Don't let this be the hiccup that puts you back into the rut of last year. Meet your goals, double down right now.
Well, that's the thing is, in this year is already shaping up to be a big one.
Yep.
And the thing we don't know is that, come third quarter, it could take a dive. And so prepare yourself, save your money, continue to prepare your business plan for the crash. That's what so many people aren't thinking about. So those of you who actually stayed with us today and are watching, that's the thing I want you to really focus on. Focus on not the now. You don't have to work very hard to get business right now. So just keep doing what you're doing. Focus on what you can be doing 6 months from now, 12 months from now.
And think about this. So we're going to have our $1.9 trillion bailout. The last bailout lasted us 4 months. We have half the bailout. This is going to last us 2 months. Let's assume these numbers are accurate and we start to open up our economy. And now all of a sudden we say, congratulations, the economy's opened back up. Everyone can go back to work. We did it. We fixed it. And then everybody gets to come out of their houses. We get to be the Donner Party, when the snow melts off and look out and see what's going on. And we're going to find that 70% of the small businesses simply don't exist anymore.
Yeah. So
yeah, I mean, the third quarter of this year is going to be very, very, I think it might be the second quarter, but I think we're going to see some interesting things happen the second half of the year.
You make a good point, by the way. That's something else as a realtor or lender that you should be doing. You should be going out and executing on a digital mayor strategy and start going out to your local businesses, the ones that still exist, and help prop them up. Yep. Man, you are going to position yourself as not only authority, in your community because you're out there in front of people, but you're going to be a savior to some of these businesses, and they're going to love you. And guess what's going to happen? They're going to want to give back to you, and they are going to eat, sleep, and breathe promoting your business, whether you're a realtor, lender, title, doesn't matter, insurance, whatever you are, man, this is such a huge opportunity for you. So if you're in a state where you can go do this, get your butt out there and go do it, man.
Yep.
Love it.
The whole idea of reciprocity, man. Reciprocity.
That's it. Brian, good stuff, brother. We will reconnect in 2 weeks. Sean will be on with you. Thank you so much. And thank you for those joining us today. And we will see you guys in a couple weeks.
All right. You have a good day, man. Nice to see you guys again.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.